Before that night, our home felt like a haven, quiet, predictable, and stitched together with years of careful effort. My name isn't important here. What matters is that I had been married to Samir for almost a decade. He brought with him a gentle warmth, and a son from his previous marriage, Ayan, who, over time, became more than just a stepson to me. I raised him like my own, helped him with homework, taught him how to iron a shirt, and stood in for his mother at every school event. Ayan was in his early 20s now, studying media and communication, and interning part-time at a production studio. A responsible young man, driven but kind-hearted, the kind you trust without question. Samir had to travel out of town for a business meeting that weekend. I didn't think much of it when Ayan casually mentioned he needed to work on a video project and asked if his stepsister Zoya could come over that evening. Zoya, his mother's daughter from her second marriage. I had never met her, only heard her name mentioned in passing. She's creative, really smart. We're doing a short film together, Ayan said. Pause. It felt unusual, having someone I didn't know in our home, especially while my husband was away. But Ayan's tone was reassuring, and I didn't want to seem overprotective. Of course, I said. Just let me know when she arrives. That evening, the doorbell rang just after 7. I opened the door to find Zoya standing there, holding a laptop and a tote bag. She was striking, tall, confident, and dressed in casual elegance that made her seem older than her years. She greeted me politely but briefly, her eyes already scanning the hallway behind me. They set up their work in the living room initially. Scripts, storyboards, audio clips. I made tea and watched from the kitchen, noticing how close they sat, how often they whispered, even though no one else was around. By 10, Ayan told me they needed a quieter space and moved their things upstairs to his room. It'll help with editing, he explained. I nodded slowly, though a flicker of discomfort settled in my chest. I stayed downstairs, folding laundry, trying to dismiss the uneasy thoughts forming in my mind. But then I heard it, Zoya's laugh. Not just laughter, but that kind of soft, knowing chuckle that lingers in the air. It was followed by a hush, then silence. I looked up toward the ceiling, the weight in my chest deepening. Something about it didn't feel like work. Felt like something else entirely. And for the first time in years, I questioned whether I really knew the boy I had raised as my own. The next morning, the house felt different. Quieter, like it was holding its breath. I came downstairs early, expecting to see remnants of their projects scattered on the dining table, but everything had been neatly packed away. It was too tidy, too intentional. Zoya appeared shortly after, descending the stairs in a robe that stopped me cold. Not just any robe, my robe. The silk one my husband had gifted me last anniversary. She moved casually, as if she belonged. "Oh," she said lightly, noticing my stare. "I couldn't find my clothes last night. Ayan told me to just grab something comfortable." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I forced a polite nod and turned back to the kitchen, hands trembling as I reached for the teapot. Ayan joined us minutes later, yawning, stretching, greeting me with his usual, "Good morning, Mom." He acted like nothing was amiss. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe it. We sat at the table, sipping tea, making small talk. Zoya spoke in polished, confident tones about her university, about film theory, about how collaboration brings people closer. Her words were carefully chosen, her glances toward Ayan calculated. After breakfast, she said she had to leave for class. Ayan offered to walk her to the gate. I watched from the window as they lingered longer than necessary. Their hug was longer than it should have been. Not inappropriate, but not what I expected between step-siblings either. Throughout the day, I tried to shake the gnawing thoughts. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was projecting. But everything felt just slightly out of place, like a picture frame tilted half an inch, just enough to notice. Later that afternoon, I walked past Ayan's room to put away laundry. His door was ajar. Inside, I saw 2 coffee mugs on his desk, both still warm. One had lipstick stains. I stood there a moment, staring at them like they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to finish. That night, Ayan was quiet during dinner. I asked about the project. He nodded vaguely, said they were almost done editing. I pressed for details. He said they were submitting it soon, didn't want to bore me with technical jargon. It was unlike him to shut me out like that. Later, while folding laundry in the guest room, I noticed something odd. A delicate gold hairpin sat on the side table, something I hadn't seen before. It was too ornate for Zoya to forget, yet it sat there like a souvenir. I held it in my palm, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. The house no longer felt like mine. Felt borrowed, occupied. And somehow the girl I had just met, the one who claimed to be here for work, was starting to feel less like a guest and more like a secret. The unease that had quietly crept into my bones was no longer ignorable. It had rooted itself in my every breath. I told myself it was motherly concern, but it felt more like betrayal blooming slowly in the corners of my mind. Ayan left early that morning, claiming he had class. I waited until I heard the front door shut and the sound of his car fade into the distance. Then I went into his room, not to invade his privacy, but to find peace and certainty. Instead, I found more questions. His bed was made too neatly. 2 folded throws lay at the footboard, one clearly used the night before. The trash bin held a takeout container I didn't remember seeing at dinner. On his desk, under a pile of project notes, was Zoya's bracelet. I remembered it from the night she arrived. A delicate silver band with a tiny blue gem. Why was it still here? I took a deep breath and walked to the living room. We had a small indoor security camera facing the porch. It wasn't high-tech, just something Samir had installed when Ayan started college. I scrolled through the previous night's footage. At 9:12 p.m., Zoya stepped outside for a call. 10 minutes later she came back in. Then nothing. No footage of her leaving. No ride share. No goodbye. She never went home. That afternoon, Ayan returned and tried to resume normalcy. He chatted about classes, helped with groceries, even complimented the dinner I barely remembered cooking. I waited until we were alone in the living room. Zoya didn't leave last night, did she? He paused only a moment. She did. Around midnight. I watched his face closely. There's no footage of her leaving. The porch camera was on. He blinked. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his expression. She might have left through the back. She was uncomfortable. Didn't want to make things awkward. His answers were rehearsed, polished. The truth, if it existed, was buried beneath a layer of practiced lies. Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the guest room. I don't know what drew me there. Intuition, perhaps. I opened a book that had been left on the nightstand. Inside, folded neatly between 2 pages, was a piece of paper. It wasn't a note meant for me. It was meant to be hidden. In Zoya's careful handwriting it read, "Last night was worth the risk. I don't care what they say, we feel real." My hands trembled as I held the note. I had my answer. But it wasn't relief I felt. It was mourning. Not for a person, but for trust, quietly suffocated behind my own walls. And just as I folded the paper back in place, I heard the front door open. Ayan's voice followed. "Mom? I brought you flowers." The flowers he brought were white lilies. My favorite. But that evening their scent made me nauseous. Ayan walked in with the same smile he'd worn since boyhood, as if nothing had shifted between us. I held the note behind my back and thanked him, my voice steady, though my heart was screaming. That night, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I waited for Samir to return the next morning. I needed another pair of eyes. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't imagining what I now knew to be true. Samir arrived with travel fatigue in his step and concern on his face. I didn't waste time. I sat him down and placed the note on the coffee table, watching his expression drain of color as he read. Then came the questions, quick, sharp, disbelieving. He called Ayan into the room. First, Ayan denied everything. He claimed the note was from another project, a fictional concept. But his voice cracked when Samir pressed further. That's when he admitted it. It wasn't planned, Ayan whispered. We just connected. I didn't mean for it to feel like this. But it did. And I didn't know how to stop it. Zoya, he explained, had reached out to him a few months ago. They bonded over their fractured families, their love for storytelling, and eventually, their confusion over what they were to each other. Step-siblings by title, strangers by blood. Somewhere in between, boundaries blurred. Samir's face was unreadable, caught between rage and disbelief. My own reaction surprised me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, watching the boy I once called son dissolve into someone unrecognizable. Zoya never returned. Ayan said she blocked all contact shortly after the confrontation, vanished like it had never happened. Maybe that was her way of protecting herself. Or maybe she knew what she'd shattered could never be pieced together again. The house fell into silence in the days that followed. Ayan remained under our roof, but something fundamental between us had broken. I couldn't look at him without remembering the robe, the laughter, the lies. I stopped calling him Beta. I stopped cooking his favorite dishes. My affection didn't turn into hate. It turned into distance. Samir and I rarely spoke of it again. Some wounds are too deep for words. I still pass that guest room sometimes. It's empty now. No books, no hairpins, no laughter echoing through its walls. Just silence. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it walks in quietly, disguised as family, and settles deep inside your life before you realize the damage is done. And once trust is broken in that way, love can survive, but it never returns the same.